Number 10. Falcon's wings. Sam has had many versions of his famous flight suit, the most notable being the ones from Black Panther and the modified version created by Tony Stark. These wings allow Falcon to fly at speeds up to 250 miles per hour, which is as fast as a Tesla Roadster can go. Equipped with a magnetic drive that creates the thrust needed to get him airborne, the suit also comes equipped with a GPS jamming device, vibranium microwave capable of resisting small firearms, and, in the past, it has also featured a talon-like grappling line. After some modifications made by Tony Stark, the suit's wings were also made of full vibranium, making them much stronger and capable of absorbing large amounts of force. Number 9. Feather projectiles. As seen in the cartoon Superhero Squad and a few other forms of media, the Falcon is able to eject his feathers from his suit and then throw them at his enemies. Being made of vibranium, these projectiles are incredibly hard and can do some serious damage. Number 8. He is in peak human condition. Now, thanks to years of intense training with Captain America, Sam is now considered to be at the peak of human condition. His strength is nothing to joke about, as he is able to send crossbones flying with a single force kick. He was able to break steel chains that tied him to a tank, and he was able to bend metal bars with his bare hands. He is also strong enough to lift at least twice his body weight and can press lift 480 pounds. And don't even get me started on his physical endurance. He continued to function in spite of getting stabbed in the chest by Zemo's sword, and continued to function after being set on fire from one of AIM's agent's flamethrowers while ripping his costume. Man, I wish I was like that. I have trouble even walking up a flight of stairs.
Number 7. Isotope E exposure. Initially, Quicksilver was only able to run at the speed of sound, but after an exposure to Isotope E, Quicksilver was able to run at speeds of up to Mach 10, which, combined with the power to resist friction and kinetic impact by vibrating his molecules, enable him to walk on water, even running across the Atlantic Ocean. Not a bad augmentation by any means.
Number 6. He is a aerialist master. It's very well known that Sam is an excellent flyer. I mean, his superhero name is the Falcon, so you kind of hope so, right? Now, thanks to many years of experimentation with his wings, he has mastered the art of flying and fighting in the air. So much so that he is considered one of the best aerial fighters in the Marvel world, exceeding the skills of other flyers such as Iron Man and Ms. Marvel.
Number 5. Time displacement copies. After his sister Scarlet Witch removes most of his powers, Quicksilver receives some new abilities thanks to the Terrigen Mist, a naturally occurring mutagen. These abilities include being able to displace himself in time and move into the future, allowing him to create copies of himself. Notably, he used this ability to take down Magneto in Son of M number 5, overwhelming him with 2 additional copies of himself. Evidently, they shared some form of thought process, even continuing each other's sentences. Probably the coolest power he had, in all honesty.
Number 4. Human-bird hybrid. Now, although we're primarily focusing on Sam Wilson, I thought I should mention that there is another hero that uses the name of Falcon, and that is Joaquin Torres, the Arizona-born sidekick to Captain America. As a result of Carl Malice's experiments, Joaquin was turned into a Falcon-human hybrid, giving him the ability to fly by flapping his arms, since they've been partially turned into wings. Now, this has obviously affected his personality as well, giving him enlarged eyes, bird-like talons on both his hand and feet, as well giving him a very distinct feature that I will discuss very shortly.
Number 3. Navigation via vibrations. Another advantage of Quicksilver's abilities is that he's able to detect vibrational patterns in his environment, effectively enabling him to be his own compass. This skill is particularly advantageous when in open areas and allows him to maintain orientation while traveling at high speed. Nothing too special to say about that, but a very useful ability.
Number 2. Speed Force. During Rebirth, we saw Deathstroke gain the Speed Force using his Icon suit, which allowed him to tap into and access the Speed Force and basically become a speedster himself. He was looking to use the Speed Force to travel back in time and save his son Grant from dying, confronting both Wally Wests in his attempt to help him do so. Though eventually he just seized the Speed Force for himself, and he actually also used this change to make an even bigger change to his image. At least, that's what he claimed, saying that he wanted to rebrand himself as a superhero. He even had his own little cool team, making his own Teen Titans. Look at him go. You go, Deathstroke. Number 1. Unreadable movements. Cassandra Cain is known for being the reader of nonverbal cues within the DC universe. This also makes her an expert fighter when it comes to reading what someone is going to do next. She can sense when you're about to pull a punch, to charge her, to dodge her or retreat, but when she came up against Deathstroke, even her attuned senses failed her. She described Deathstroke's movements as a choir of voices. It's like there were too many options for what he'd do to make him readable. Any and all options appear plausible, making it impossible to sense just exactly what he'd do next in a fight, and making it hard to fight him in hand-to-hand combat. It's like the poker face of fighting. It's like he's like, I can do it all. I could go anywhere. I could be anything. I'm a tomato. Tomato, tomato. Number 10. Immortality. While this superpower hasn't been confirmed, I think after all this time we can assume it's highly possible without it having to be stated in the comics. If you haven't read anything X-Men or Mystique, you may not know that she has been alive for likely 200 plus years. She met her greatest love, the mutant Destiny, around the turn of the century when she already appeared to be a grown adult. The hard thing about Mystique though is because she can change her appearance, it's hard for us to determine just how old she is, and some have theorized that she could even be ancient in age. As her codename implies, she is a mysterious character. We don't even know if her assumed natural state and look are actually even natural. We may have never even yet seen Mystique's true face unchanged. She may not even have one. She may not even have been born a woman, who knows? Mystery, mystery, mystery. Number 9. Deception and distraction. While it may not seem like a superpower, Mystique definitely makes it feel like one at the level she works at. She has deceived even those that most would deem undeceivable. At one point she was able to create a situation wherein a whole town was deceived into attacking Wolverine after she deceived him by making him kill an innocent woman who he thought was Mystique in disguise. She also was able to use her level of deception and distraction to delay fights in order to get the upper hand on her assailants, by often transforming into a little girl. While you would think many would know that Mystique was messing with them, especially because some of them actually saw her transform, she is so convincing as a helpless little girl that she is often able to use this to gain that upper hand, seemingly innocent until proving just why she is so deeply deadly. Number 8. Master Martial Artist. Daken was trained by Cyber, aka Silas Burr, who currently goes by the alias of Hornet. Burr trained Daken at the camp that he was placed in by Romulus after he'd been taken in by the villain following the accidental destruction of his adopted family by Daken's own hands. Long story. This boot camp located in Canada was the same one his father Wolverine had trained at. Daken was trained there for 9 months and was considered Burr's most promising student that he had ever trained. Daken was then ordered by Romulus to destroy the camp and kill everyone within it. He complied, but as he was about to finish the job and kill Burr, Romulus appeared and ordered Daken to spare Burr, whom he claimed he had plans for. It was this superior training that would later be key to Daken's abilities to defeat skilled hand-to-hand combatants later in life, like the Punisher, whom he successfully defeated with his claws and fighting skills, despite the fact that Frank Castle was actually armed at the time. Yeah, he had like a bunch of guns. The fight ended with Daken as the Dark Avengers Wolverine decapitating and dismembering the Punisher. Number 7. Size altering. While Mystique may be able to change shape and size, this was originally limited to those who were around a similar build to her. Her powers in terms of changing shape were relatively limited when she first was introduced. Over time, however, Mystique has honed her shape-shifting power and has had more of her true potential unlocked. This happened during her time in the X-Men Forever comics when she saw her power level dramatically increased in the capacity of changing size. She was then able to make herself gigantic in proportion. Based on what we've seen here and there over the years since this development, she should be able to adjust her size on pretty much an Ant-Man level. But unfortunately this seems to be a power that many writers leave unutilized, so it doesn't come up a lot. Probably because it would make her too similar to Ant-Man himself. And we'd all rather see Mystique shapeshift into everyday looking people or mutants most days, rather than, you know, giant versions of them. Or giant versions of herself. Or microscopic versions of herself, or really tiny versions of herself. You know what I mean. Number 6. Improvisation and acting. Many may think it would be easy to be villain Raven Darkholme. All you have to do to be the good guys, or when you're being good, the bad guys, is shapeshift into someone else and everything is pretty much almost done for you. But what people often forget is Mystique does not gain the memories of those she changes into. So her trickery and shapeshifting is more of an art than you'd think. Beyond looking like someone, she often has to play the role of the person she is imitating well enough to convince those around her. Sometimes people who know that target intimately. And she's managed to successfully pull this off on multiple occasions, even when the person she's imitating is like a genius scientist, or even if she's convincing the romantic partners of those she imitates in the bedroom as well. Phantom X seemed pretty convinced when she slept with him while under the guise of Psylocke, so. Number 5. Shapeshift into animals. Not only can Mystique shapeshift into other beings, but once her power level was increased in the comics, she also found it possible to shapeshift beyond humanoids. She could give herself tentacles, turn into animals, give herself wings, and even once turn into a sheet of paper in order to survive an explosion. Making oneself almost two-dimensional and as flat as a sheet of paper is pretty impressive. Though thankfully that sheet of paper didn't catch fire in the explosion. I feel like, you know, there'd be a risk of that. While in the comics she did not possess this level of shapeshifting abilities immediately, in the X-Men Evolution animated series she started off being at this level with her powers. Mystique has even used her shapeshift abilities to make internal changes to her body, shifting vital organs around to protect them from getting damaged from injuries. Number 4. Magical Bite. Cheetah's fangs aren't all just show. She often uses them to tear people apart so she can feed on their blood. Her bloodlust comes as a punishment from the tree god Kartaga, who grants Cheetah her powers as her husband. Because Barbara was not a virgin when she became his bride, she now has a bloodlust to satiate as a result. Not that this bothers her. In fact, she seems to revel in it. But beyond using her fangs to help her feast on human and animal blood and flesh alike, she has also proven just how tough and powerful her bite can really be. Because her powers are also magical. So because her powers are also magical, she can actually break Superman's usually impenetrable skin with her fangs. Bullets might bounce off of him, but Cheetah's teeth manage to just sink in just fine due to her ability's connection to magic. Number 3. Mask his scent. Despite not being at an Omega level when it comes to his pheromone powers, Daken can actually use his pheromone powers to also hide himself when he wants to remain hidden. We all know how good of a tracker Wolverine is, and with Daken's senses heightened as well, he has also inherited his father's gift for tracking. But unlike his father, he can also mask his scent, making him an especially good hunter and tracker in the sense that he actually can't be tracked himself while he's tracking you. So it would be hard for anyone to know that Daken was actually on their trail, and it would be equally hard for someone to hunt him. Pheromones. They're more than just emotion manipulation. Fun fact. Number 2. Telepathic immunity. During Mystique's series of the same name, Mystique Ultimate, we get a more in-depth look at Raven's mind and abilities as she works alongside Charles Xavier. One thing we learn from her close interaction with Charles is that her mind is basically unreadable when it comes to telepathy, adding to her ability to become, well, just about anyone. Charles himself attests that her mind is too chaotic to read, too erratic. It's like it's constantly being reshaped and reformed. So apparently her shapeshifting abilities also grant this secondary telepathic resistance as well, guarding her against being easily found out while under disguise. If you want more insight into just how much work goes into wielding this power and honing it, you should check out X-Men Black Mystique, which delves into Mystique's perspective when it comes to all that is involved behind the scenes. Number 1. Scent altering. For all of her time in the comics, Mystique definitely is the type to hold grudges, and definitely see them carried forward throughout. One such person she has had a big issue with throughout her history is Wolverine. These two have been on and off again lovers, enemies, and occasionally partners for at least 90 plus years. We see them meet in the 2003 Wolverine series in 1921 Mexico, bonding over the fact that they are both prisoners sentenced to death. Their long-standing relationship would at one point end in Raven's death at Wolverine's hands as revenge for her sending him to hell. Her death of course was short-lived, because comics. Her body was recovered and auctioned off to the Hand who resurrected her. When she returned from the dead, she was even more powerful than ever, and while her scent could normally be used to give her away, even while disguised to Wolverine, who had even used her scent to track her before, she now possessed the ability to adapt her scent to those whose form she took, making her an even more powerful shapeshifter, nigh undetectable. Can't detect her thoughts, you can't detect her smell. What can you detect? Nothing.
And at number 10, thermochemical energy. Let's start off this list by addressing the basics behind Sam's powers. He possesses the ability to generate something called thermochemical energy from his body, releasing it from his skin. This is energy that allows for the mutant to thrust himself and propel his body through the air, not dissimilar to a rocket. In the early days, he was only able to emit this energy from his feet and his legs, but nowadays his skills have improved tenfold, and he can release this energy from any part of his body, but we'll dive into more of that a bit later on. And at number 9, superhuman durability. This one is kind of a given when your mutant power is literally flinging yourself through the air at dangerously fast speeds. When using his powers, Sam's durability increases significantly, all thanks to the energy field that forms around his body. When not using his powers though, he's as vulnerable as a regular old human being. Despite what he's learned in his training, of course. I mean, that'd come in pretty nifty. Like, imagine you just like wanted to show off to your friends and then you're just like, I'm gonna shoot myself into a wall and then break through it like the Kool-Aid Man and like live to tell the tale. And at number 8, willpower. Shooting oneself through the air is no light matter. Is that a pun? I guess. If you think about it, it could be potentially fatal for Sam to do so, but that's where this facet of his powers come in. He is able to maneuver his body, control his speed, and change his direction solely through sheer willpower. This could potentially answer why our next number has been a question for those of you who are Cannonball fans.
Number 7. Super Jump. This ability is tied to his incredible strength and durability. Because he is both strong and durable, he is able to use his strength to push himself off the ground and leap great distances. And it doesn't hurt him because of his durability. He could jump up to certain buildings or is able to jump off very high points and land without even a scratch. All of those traits definitely come in handy for any superhero, and not even all superheroes don't even have that. So the fact that Luke Cage does makes life a little bit easier for him when he goes up So the fact that Luke Cage does makes life a little bit easier for him when he goes out to protect the city. Also, who wouldn't want to be able to jump great distances? I mean, that'd be awesome, just jumping around the city. A guy can dream.
Up next, number 6, flight. Duh, right? But Sam's ability to fly is one that has a history. Now, in the early days, the character wasn't able to stop himself once he throttled himself into the sky and began to fly. Despite being able to maneuver in order to fully stop, he would have to find an object strong enough to force him to stop by holding onto it or like straight up crashing into it. Or he would keep flying until his powers ran out of energy, as if he were some sort of propeller plane puttering out of gas. But now, after years of practice, the character can stop himself without having to resort to those tactics. I guess practice does make perfect.
Number 5, acute senses. Now you may be thinking, are you okay? Hypersenses are a good thing. However, not when they get to the point where they overwhelm you. Sometimes on rare occasions, when it behooves the plot, T'Challa's abilities can be a bit of a hindrance rather than a help. So even though other characters are rocking their acute senses in regular situations, sometimes T'Challa can't. Sometimes they play this off as because they're so acute, stronger than other people's. That's why he is king. That's not true, but it still sounds as legit as anything else, you know, when it comes to the fluctuating scale of his senses. Now this does actually make sense, but it comes down to a matter of consistency.
And at 4, King of the Dwarves. Alright, this one is a bit obscure, but back in What If Volume 2 Issue 12 from 1990, in a story titled What If the X-Men Stayed in Asgard, you know, the one in which Storm becomes the new goddess of thunder, Sam ends up staying too. And he falls in love with Kindra, the daughter of Eotree, the Dwarf King. You know, the fellow that Peter Dinklage played in the MCU in Avengers Infinity War. Eotree dies later on in a battle, and Sam ends up taking on the mantle of the King of the Dwarves, under the name of Sam the First. One can assume that the title comes with the perks Eotree had, which was an expertise on forging weapons and an extended lifespan, the latter likely being what Sam would have inherited. And to be fair, considering that when the X-Men were in Asgard, Cannibal pretty much saved Odin's life, so he definitely has earned the respect of the Asgardians enough to take up such a title.
Number 3. Hot and cold resistance. So since Luke is basically invulnerable, certain environments don't affect him like they would us. This applies to extreme hot and cold environments. While a lot of other people or even heroes would fall under these harsh conditions, Luke Cage is able to carry on and continue whatever he's doing. Like, it could be the coldest day, you know, with snow and it's like super windy, and he could just walk outside, t-shirt, shorts if he wanted to. I mean, he probably wouldn't do that, but he could. And that is something that a lot of people might not know about him. But, you know, some probably already do.
Number 2, expert marksman. Despite being more well known for his feral and brute strength fighting style, Sabretooth also maintains proficiency with firearms as well. He likely received his excellent targeting and weapon wielding skills from training with various groups including the CIA, Hydra, and even Weapon X. Heck, he was even a member of Nick Fury's Avengers team for a while in the 1950s. I'm sure he learned a fair amount about hitting a target there as well. Number 1, Power Cosmic. Victor Creed of Earth 295 was once a Herald of Galactus for a very short time. He was actually offered a permanent position as Herald, but he turned it down, returning the Power Cosmic to Galactus after helping to destroy the villainous Silver Surfer of Earth 552. This all went down in Exiles Volume 1, where Earth 295 Sabretooth himself served alongside that team of heroes, the Exiles. Number 10, can control her tail separately. Basically, Cheetah's tail is like having another limb, and a long one at that. I know this might not sound like a super cool power, but just wait. Cheetah's tail isn't just used for agility and balance. She has also used it before to grab things away from her enemies, trip them up, knock them over, and strangle them. There's a lot of strangling that goes on with this tail, believe you me. And while a tail might seem easy to wrest your throat from, it turns out it's actually not that easy. Both Superman and Wonder Woman have struggled in its grasp before, fighting to get free of Barbara's strangle tail hold. What a move. I'll strangle you with my tail. The crazy part too is I feel like she always does it and then her hands are just like posing. Like there's not a lot of like I'll strangle you and then also blah, cut you. Number 9, strength. People think of Barbara Minerva as Cheetah, they usually think of her agility, her stealth, and her speed, appropriately, as these are all things that cheetahs in nature are also known for. What people seem to forget is just how strong she is. Even writers seem to forget this when they make it possible for her to be beaten by Catwoman and Batman, who, let's be honest, are really not strong enough to tangle with her. With her power imbued by magic, she is a very strong and dangerous villain. We have seen her grapple with both Wonder Woman and Superman, and easily hold her own against Diana, even beating her from time to time. Though there are usually some extenuating circumstances surrounding these scuffles where she wins, but I digress. Still, the two have been judged to be almost equal when it comes to strength multiple times, including when we saw the two women in a tug of war involving Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. Can I also just point out that Cheetah was both tangled up at the time and was only using one arm as well while she held off Diana's pull. That's insane. Like, Diana's like, got both arms. Cheetah's like, I got this, I'm fine. Number 8. Grows clothing. I feel like this is one we should all know about, but it's an easy one to forget as well. I constantly forget about it until I am grossly reminded that, oh yeah, all those clothes Mystique appears to be wearing are actually a part of her. This was a huge thing in the X-Men films, although in the Ultimate Universe this is actually very much not a thing. Mystique actually has to make sure that she has clothes, as she cannot like transform her body magically into clothes. What I've always wondered is, when she takes off an article of clothing, like her jacket, does that mean she's like shedding skin? What's happening there? Number 7. Superhuman durability. Her durability goes beyond what you might expect when it comes to a supervillain with the powers of a cheetah. While being agile and dexterous enough to dodge blows, it seems that Barbara spends more time taking hits than dodging them. Which, when she's going up against members of the Justice League, seems like a surefire way to get KO'd. And yet, she manages to hold her own. She's durable enough to take a hit from Wonder Woman or Superman even, and get back up. And at one point she was even hit with 50,000 volts of electricity and still just continued on, barely even phased. If that isn't superior resilience, I certainly do not know what is. 50,000 volts of electricity, that's a lot of volts. That's more than this many. It's a lot. Number 6. Size altering. During the events of Trinity Volume 1, Cheetah joined up with the Dark Arcana, a group of villains each representing a card/character from the tarot, and imbued with godlike powers. Cheetah herself represented the Star, and had many additional abilities at this time, including size altering. At one point, a giant cheetah rampages through a city where it seems like she is also kind of turning the civilians into cheetah-like creatures themselves. So there's a lot going on in Trinity. There's a lot of souped up villains. It's insane. Number 5. Gun proficiency. For those who are unaware, Cheetah was also part of the Suicide Squad for a short time. Her time on the squad was brief, but during it we got to see another side of Cheetah, a villain who usually actually operates alone. We also got to see her working alongside a team, and we got to see her armed in a way that she isn't normally. Cheetah usually prefers hand-to-hand combat, fighting with her claws, her teeth, and her tail. But during her time on the squad, we also learned that she can do a much more than just tear you to bits with her bare hands. She can also mow you down with firearms as well. What? While it remains somewhat of a mystery as to how she acquired such skills with firearms during her time as an archaeologist, it's fair to assume that Waller may have loaned out someone to train up her squad in using various firearms, including Cheetah, making her even more deadly, and showing some growth since her introduction. I remember an issue where she actually just ran from gunfire. Well, I mean, she isn't running now. She's causing it. She's causing the gunfire. Number 4. Undetectable strike. You might have noticed that Dawkins seems to have a remarkable skill when it comes to landing blows on his enemies before they even seem to notice him. While he is pretty fast when it comes to his reflexes and reaction time, it turns out that the speed behind his attack doesn't actually have to do with super speed. Nah. It's more of a learned technique. While fighting Deadpool in Wolverine Origins, he explains to Wade just exactly how this apparent superpower works. It isn't about being invisible or being super fast. It's actually about simply being where his opponent can't see, coming at your opponent from a vantage point which they themselves can't anticipate. It's a pretty cool superpower, because he definitely hits people when like they do not see it coming at all. He's also done it when he seems to be in someone's line of sight, so I don't know what that means. I guess he's like knows where your eyes are. Number 3. Healing factor. While her healing factor isn't super powerful, it still exists. Let's not forget that Mystique's mutant powers allow her to change appearance, changing her body. By extension, she can also use the same power to heal non-lethal wounds by closing them up. This ability does require a good amount of focus and energy on Mystique's part, however, which is why the idea of healing something more serious is so difficult. The injury itself would take energy and focus away from her. It has been stated before in the comics, but very rarely, leaving many to ponder on if her healing factor is really a thing, as it's not really super consistent. But for those who doubt, I'll remind you that Mystique is pretty old, and she isn't one to shy away from the fight, leaving us to believe that she must have a healing factor if she has been in physical fights more often than not during her lifespan. And I think we can all agree that she likely has. she's pretty much consistently fighting people. Number 2. God Killer. During Wonder Woman Volume 5, during the Year of the Villain story arc, we saw Cheetah wield the God Killer. This is a sword that can transform into any weapon its user sees fit. It is one of the only weapons powerful enough to kill a god. It can't be destroyed and can also absorb energy that is directed at it, dealing it back with double the force. In Wonder Woman, Cheetah uses the blade to kill Aphrodite, dealing one of the greatest blows to her foe Wonder Woman. Without Aphrodite, there is a lack of love in the world, which provides almost a lack of guidance and motivation to Wonder Woman, who often fights in the name of love. It kind of also makes her super depressed for a little bit, like she's like losing her motivation, doesn't know why she's fighting, and this doesn't just threaten her, but it also affects the entire world, as the loss of love affects everybody. Number 1. Cursing Claws. Cheetah's fangs and claws aren't just deadly because they are sharp and can tear you apart, they have also been shown to curse those that they come in contact with, sometimes. In the New 52, we saw her use them to cast a magical curse on Superman, which transformed him into a ferocious, cheetah-like creature. Barbara was able to use him against the Justice League as a result of this transformation. We also saw a version of Cheetah in Justice League Doom cause Wonder Woman some grief with her curse abilities. She didn't transform Wonder Woman into a cheetah, however, but she did cause her to hallucinate, making Wonder Woman see cheetahs at every turn, believing that innocent people around her were actually the ferocious spotted creatures themselves known as cheetahs. She's like, is that a person? It's a cheetah.
Number 10. Shape-shifting / molecular control. Sinister, through the absorption of abilities held by a mutant named Courier, can now manipulate his structure down to a molecular level. Molecular. Hard to say some days. While he is most often shown using this ability to regenerate, he can also use it to great effect when it comes to shape-shifting. Sinister could really modify his appearance to whatever he chose, so that design is a choice. He likes it. He feels it's terrifying. I mean, terrifying no. Off-putting and memorable 100%. Plus, it's creative, really shows what you can do when you modify yourself. Tassels. Built-in tassels for life. Also sexy lady clones, because why not? I mean, go hard or go home. Number 9. Teleport. Sinister can teleport. This has been shown on many occasions. However, when it comes to this ability, there is a little bit of a mystery behind it. It is unclear whether this is a mutant ability he has added to his repertoire or some form of technology that he has integrated onto his person. Beast believes it is achieved through technology that he has in his headquarters, which are specifically Tesseract headquarters. But it's still kinda up in the air. Either way, at times Mr. Sinister can teleport, so watch out. Number 8. Stamina. Sinister has superhuman stamina, which on the surface may not seem like anything to write home about. Seems like an ability that for many characters, hero or villain, is just par for the course. However, in Sinister's case, how he has achieved it is pretty interesting. Also, does anybody else just like saying his actual name? Nathaniel Essex. Good name. So before he had given himself the abilities he has, Essex was trying to modify himself to peak human condition, which he would decide was the mutant form, and the next step in human evolution. So he managed to make his body produce less fatigue toxins, so he is able to assert himself at peak capacity for far longer than your average human.
Number 7. Enhanced Stamina. Another power that is a byproduct of Sabretooth's insane healing factor is his enhanced stamina. His healing factor helps to reduce the physical exhaustion his muscles feel during prolonged physical activity. This is because they help to negate the buildup of lactic acid that would normally cause one to feel fatigued and repair damaged muscle at an accelerated rate.
Number 6. Mild Technopath. Sinister has the ability to sync up with his tech. Now the mild is there because this is not all tech, it's his tech. That is stuff he is working with specifically and only what he is interested in. Sebastian Shaw has stated that Sinister often doesn't make plans the best that they could be because he gets attached to older modes of technology when advancements have already been made. Advancements that could really update or speed up his plans. Sometimes you just get used to doing things your own way. Now I like to imagine Sinister on like a broken phone several generations old while the rest of the villain community is trying to get him like the new iPhone. Make your own fun. Make your own headcanons.
Number 5. Master Manipulator. Along with being a skilled tactician, Deathstroke has proven to be a wily adversary. Not only did he plot to corrupt the Teen Titans using his own son Jericho, though that somewhat backfired, and before that he tried to corrupt them using Terra, though I'd rather not talk about the problematic yet amazing storyline that was the Judas Contract, but he also has manipulated the Flash into a position of weakness so that he could attack him, and has impersonated heroes such as Batman to manipulate others into doing his bidding. Also, just impersonating Batman itself is a skill, and is pretty ballsy. Like, if Batman catches you, whew, ugh. I mean, I don't think he's scared, he's obviously beat him up before, so. Deathstroke is not scared of anyone, not even the Bat.
Number 4. telekinetically increased strength. Mr. Sinister has telekinetic abilities, which in and of itself again can seem like it's just being passed out like free samples at the supermarket, but how he uses it is fascinating. He sometimes uses his telekinetic abilities to augment his strength. So before telekinesis, he vacillates in between being able to lift between 2 to 10 tons. This depends on his current shape, as using his shape-shifting abilities can also alter his strength. However, when he uses his telekinesis to boost, he can lift up to 25 tons, and that is nothing to sneeze at. Although when you think about it, it's also double the exertion, because now it's both mental and physical exertion.
Number 3. Master Manipulator. With Sabretooth being as strong and feral as he is, people often forget that he is also quite brilliant when it comes to plotting. Over the years, he has created many plots and tactfully manipulated others into doing his bidding, especially Wolverine. He manipulated Wolverine into killing his own son, and in Wolverine Volume 2, Issue 10, into slaughtering an entire village of pretty much innocent people. He's used his intellect to break into a heavily guarded government facility, and to even beat Mr. Sinister, who is known for his brilliant mind.
Number 2. Geneticist. That's not a power, you cry. However, in Sinister's case, I beg to differ. Allow me to elaborate. It was Nathaniel Essex's interest and abilities to manipulate genetics that granted him powers in the first place, as he used himself for experimentation. And his powers come from multiple sources, so even then it can be hard to trace. He learned to add abilities to himself, and made himself a mutant by choice and design. That's pretty impressive actually. He's also used this ability to create an army of clones. So without this first interest, there would be no Mr. Sinister in the first place, and that makes it pretty important. Number 1. Gambit. Now, Sinister has a complicated relationship with several mutants, but one prominent one is Gambit. He's also taken samples from Gambit to add to himself. Sinister is also the person who performed surgery on Gambit to make his powers easier to control, and prevent him from reaching his new Son Omega level potential. And for a brief period, Sinister showed that he can use a combination of his skills to completely masquerade as someone else, transforming into Gambit and back in front of him. Horrifying, terrifying stuff. It shows how confident he is that he doesn't rely on such tactics, often preferring to walk around with his flamboyant villain look. Which, I mean, come on, again, tassels.
Number 10. Slowed aging. Despite being born in 1946 to his parents Logan and Wolverine's wife Itsu, Daken barely looks a day over 25. In reality, he is almost mid-70s, but he certainly doesn't look it. This seems like an obvious power in truth. I mean, Wolverine obviously is over 100 years old, so it shouldn't surprise us that his son is also almost ancient. However, we also all think of Daken as being Wolverine's son, and therefore just think of him as being like super young, like being the younger Wolverine. I actually forgot myself just how old he is when I was writing this list. So just because he looks and often acts quite young doesn't mean that he is. It is likely that his lifespan will echo that of his father, meaning that he'll likely live well beyond 100. Who's ready for the Old Man Daken series? I bet he'll still be as sassy and broody as he is now. Probably also still look 25. He'll just be like 25 with white hair. Number 9. Built-in Muramasa Blade. The Muramasa Blade is known for its exceptionally devastating properties. It can cancel out the regeneration or healing factor of those it comes into contact with, and is tough enough to cut through adamantium. Basically, it's the blade you want if you're going to fight with Wolverine. In Daken's case though, he wanted to use it in a fight against Romulus. He ended up getting a piece of the blade following a fight against Cyclops and the X-Men. Cyclops had been guarding the blade at the time. Once he had it in his possession, Daken took the blade to the Tinkerer with the purpose of having it melted down and attached to his claws. More specifically, his one wrist claw. Of course, this needed to be a delicate procedure, given that Daken himself could be harmed by the metal of the blade, because, you know, he's also got a healing factor. As such, the Muramasa was not properly anchored to Daken's claws, because it was kind of a rush job, and because it's kind of a hard job to do. Meaning that when Wolverine came after Daken to stop him, it was easier for him to do so. Wolverine broke both of Daken's arms and was able to remove the built-in Muramasa blade from him. Daken also gets his arms broken a lot. Still, it was pretty insane for a few issues when Daken had the power of the Muramasa blade literally embedded in him, or rather sort of like on him. Number 8. Speed Force? Wait a minute, don't we all know this one? Well, I mean, you do. Yes, you know that she's fast, but do you know just how fast Minerva is? And wait, did Minerva ever have the Speed Force? Well, no, not exactly, but she's definitely been faster than a cheetah. And a cheetah can go up to 120 kilometers an hour, which is around 70 miles per hour for those of you who are watching us in the States. She's usually measured at the same speed as Wonder Woman, the two women being deemed even, but still behind in terms of levels of speed when compared to with Superman and all of the Flashes. At one point, however, Barbara wanted to become even faster, to beat Wonder Woman and rival the Flashes as a speedster herself. She reached out to Hunter Zolomon about this, and although he explained he couldn't just lend her speed or like just help her tap into the speed force or speed energy of any kind, because it doesn't work like that. He did offer to help her somewhat. He trained her and explained what was holding her back was actually psychological, and that she would have to kill the previous cheetah, Priscilla Rich, to move forward. It turned out he was right, and we saw an even faster version of the cheetah emerge after she killed Priscilla, one who was shown to almost rival Wally in speed in Volume 2, Issue 214 of Wonder Woman. That is until she kissed him. Don't ask me, just read the comic. I know there's gonna be people that are gonna be like, what do you mean until she kissed him? What does that mean? You gotta read it, it's confusing. Wonder Woman's in a blindfold, it's all nuts in that comic, man. There's a lot of questions I have. Number 7. Emotional manipulation. Daken has the ability to secrete pheromones which allow him to manipulate his opponent's emotions. He can make you feel depressed, happy, erratic, anxious, sad, or even calm you mid-fight. I wonder who that could be super useful against. Calming one down. You guessed it, the Hulk, or more specifically in regards to my example here, the Hulk's son Scar. Daken used this technique on Scar mid-fight, causing the big green guy to sit down and talk with him and then change back into his human form. He almost kills Scar as a result, at Scar's own behest while in human form. Fortunately, Banner and Logan bust in and put a stop to this. Logan's like, I told you my son was wily, I told you. He's a troublemaker, that Daken. Number 6. Samurai. Wolverine was trained as a samurai, and though he and Daken are very different people, it appears this skill did not skip a generation when it comes to Daken. Not that it's like inherited, but you know what I mean. In Dark Wolverine issue 76, Norman Osborn questions Daken about his skills, asking him if he too was trained in the ways of a samurai, like his father. He answers that in fact he was, and that he also happens to be a skilled archer as well, adding that ability of marksman to his long list of capabilities when it comes to fighting. Because you know, samurai are also trained in archery. Fun fact, in case you didn't know that. Number 5. Telepathic resistance. You might have guessed this would be on the list. I mean, if you've seen a lot of my other superpower lists revolving around mutants, you definitely were probably expecting this one. But you still might be surprised, because, you know, it's not what one imagines when they initially think of Daken's abilities. Daken's side defense abilities were so strong, as a matter of fact, that he was able to use them to rebound an attack on his mind from a young Jean Grey, throwing it right back at her, causing her to momentarily lose control of her abilities and attack her teammates. It's like a side blast outward at them. That's pretty cool though, if you can like use it against, even though it was a young Jean Grey at all, I feel like a side defense that's a strong side defense. In my mind. Number 4. Super strength. What some people might not think about is the fact that Mystique has been shown to shapeshift on a molecular level. What does this mean for her abilities? It means that she can adjust her strength levels pretty much as she sees fit, and that when she appears to have more muscle, it's not just for show. She can actually use that muscle. Because of this, we have seen Mystique, both while disguised and while not disguised, do all sorts of crazy things. She once caught a kick from Sabretooth and tossed him through a window like a rag doll, and she has killed people with one punch. And she even one time broke Forge's cybernetic leg with a single kick. Ouch. Number 3. Flight. Back to the Trinity event, as I said earlier, Cheetah was granted a great many additional powers as a result of this event. Another one that proved useful was her power of flight. It's weird, but even the idea of a flying cat without Cheetah's insane bloodthirst and strength or any of that just kind of terrifies me. It's already frightening enough when your cat pounces on your toes in the middle of the night. Imagine if it could just launch itself onto you out of midair at any time. Ugh. We see Cheetah flying around with her fellow Dark Arcana pals a few times in Trinity Volume 1. Also seeing her pal around and link up with Joker is another terrifying image we get from this series. Yeah, Joker's there too, and he's also crazy powerful. Number 2. Energy Claws. Energy Claws. While Daken was the Horseman of Death, he was granted some bonus powers from the Celestial Death Seed, which resurrected him. Oh yeah, before he was the Horseman of Death, he died. Better yet, it was Wolverine who killed him. Yeah, I think he drowned him in a puddle actually. I know, it's pretty surprising. A lot of family drama between those two. One of the powers the Death Seed granted Daken was Enhanced Claws. The best way to describe them is Energy Claws. They were imbued with some kind of dark, necrotic, or celestial energy, and his new Energy Claws appeared to be more durable and allow him to infect others with the energy that they emit. Weirder still, sometimes they still kind of show up. He sometimes still has Energy Claws. It's really random though. Number 1. Master Manipulator. Beyond being the king of sass and insanely skilled fighter and being armed with his claws, healing, and pheromone powers, Daken is also an evil genius. He's manipulated some of the best and even double-crossed those who thought they had his loyalty, proving that Daken is always out for himself, taking what he wants when he wants it with no apologies to anyone that he has to manipulate in order to get his way. Such a bad boy. Such a bad boy. He has manipulated Norman Osborn, outsmarted Reed Richards, and even used the Fantastic 4 Avengers and X-Men in a play against one another. When it comes to devious plans, Daken proves time and time again in the comics why he's just simply one of the best. Also, you know, if you're like double-crossing Norman Osborn, you're just like, I don't know, you're like a master manipulator. You don't mess with Norman Osborn. Unless you're Spider-Man.
Starting us off in at number 10, he is resistant to hypnosis. The Super Soldier Serum gives Cap immunity towards specific toxins and accelerates his metabolism, but it also gives him resistance to hypnosis, which is really cool, except for the fact that the resistance to hypnosis is kind of moot in a few ways when you're incredibly vulnerable to manipulation in the first place, and that is something that Cap definitely is. Now before you Cap fans get upset over this, it's true. Cap has on numerous occasions been incredibly susceptible and responsive to manipulation. He's been manipulated into doing things for Hydra and other foes on several occasions. Hell, a version of Steve was going around shouting "Hail Hydra" in 2017's Secret Empire after all, guys. I know it wasn't the real Steve Rogers or the 616 Steve Rogers, but come on. Look at how he was manipulated by Hydra when they covertly were running S.H.I.E.L.D. to secretly do their bidding in the MCU. Yeah, ultimately Rogers just wants to serve the greater good, but sometimes he can be naive about it. I mean, it's not totally a bad quality to have, to see the good in everybody and want to trust people.
Number 10. Doing math for chaos. Many iterations of the Scarlet Witch have the ability to wield chaos magic. But in the 1610 universe, that being the Ultimate Verse, Wanda had a bit of a different way of using her powers. And this way also amplified her magic. She had to do math. She would have to calculate the mathematical probability of the effect she intended to create. So this meant she would have to create increasingly complex formulas to create more complex effects. Just sucking all the fun out of magic. I'm kidding, math is important, but it's far more fun to imagine just willing things into existence with your mind. This was one of the most unique depictions of the Scarlet Witch's powers to date. And while complicated, it was a type of complicated most could understand, and it definitely made some people not want her powers anymore.
Number 10. Skilled Spy. Jessica Drew has been trained in espionage by Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. and actually is a fantastic spy. Her training likely also came in handy in the Spider-Verse when she infiltrated the Inheritors, going undercover and impersonating Morland's lover on Loomworld, who apparently just happened to look exactly like her. Weird. Talk about taking one for the team. Her assistance in the Spider-Verse storyline, however, went to show just how formidable a foe Jessica Drew can be. All I'm saying is you would not want to get on her bad side. So wait, when Veronica the Skrull Queen was posing as Jessica Drew, when she went on like a spy mission for S.H.I.E.L.D., would we call that spyception? Spies on spies on spies? Number 9. Super Sleuth. When you think of Jessica Drew, you may think of her more spider-like abilities. But what you might have forgotten is that she's actually a registered private investigator. That's right. At one point, Jessica Drew moved to San Francisco and worked hard to get her private investigator license. Not only that, but she was good at it too. During this time in her life, everything felt like it was actually going super right. She opened her own successful PI business, her vigilante persona was being praised by the city as she was referred to as the Dark Angel of San Francisco, and she fell in love with her landlord, David. Unfortunately, the last part didn't end up working out after David discovered that she was a superhero. And after a fight with Morgan Le Fay, she ended up comatose. And once she was revived, powerless. Harsh. What a harsh time. Not surprised she's a super sleuth, considering that she was kind of inspired by Nancy Drew. Number 8. Insane amount of endurance. Jessica Drew is one of the few heroes who is known for fighting crime even while very visibly pregnant. I mean, sure, other women have probably done it. Sue Storm has also probably fought while she was, with child, but none have gotten quite as hard as Spider-Woman. While checking out an off-world maternity ward, a very, very pregnant Jessica found herself fighting hard as it was invaded by Skrulls. I kid you not. Not only is that impressive enough, but she kicked some serious butt and almost handily defeated them until she went into labor. She managed to get away with some doctors, give birth, and return with stitches as she had just had a C-section delivery, and take out the rest of the Skrulls. Like, I'm all for girl power, but this is an impossible level of endurance. What is going on in these comics? Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think of all the pregnant women that I have known in my life, and I'm like, could you imagine? Although they're rage. They sometimes can rage like crazy, so maybe it could happen.
Number 9. Fortune Teller. There have been many iterations of Wanda across the multiverse, for it is vast and all-encompassing. So it is that on Earth 1000, Wanda is a fortune teller, going by the name Mistress Wanda, which makes you think that maybe she has another side business going, like Good Omens. So long story short, she appeared briefly in one of those events wherein characters are battling across the multiverse, in order to keep it together. She appeared in Domination Factor 4.7 in the issue Lost in Space-Time, dealing with fallout of Loki having tricked the Avengers and the Fantastic Four into altering the course of history. The heroes need to possess versions of themselves in these altered universes to right the wrongs. So it is that Wanda ends up taking over the body of her fortune teller counterpart mid-reading. Because is there any better time?
And at number 9, Cap Wolf. Captain America can become a werewolf, or at least he has become a werewolf in the past. He briefly had werewolf powers in 1992 during a 6-part story arc titled Man and Wolf in Captain America issue 402. In the woods outside of Massachusetts, X-Men member Wolverine finds a dead body, so he calls Cap in for assistance. While investigating, Steve ends up uncovering a town containing a bunch of lycanthropes, and of course, in the process, he himself is transformed into a werewolf. It's Cap Wolf, a vicious superhero with all the powers of Captain America and all the powers of a werewolf. Despite it not sticking, this wasn't the only time that a Captain America has become a werewolf. Sam Wilson would experience a similar situation years later while operating under the mantle. That's kind of fun. Moving on to number 8, his musical abilities. Okay, so this one is a little silly, and it's an almost ability, sort of. Back in 1985, we almost added Broadway musical star to the list of things that Captain America has done. Cap was meant to have his own musical with an estimated budget of $4 million. The concept actually sounds a little amazing. Also, this was outside of the comics, guys. The story would have followed Steve Rogers suffering through a midlife crisis, lulz, then running off on a mission to rescue his girlfriend from a terrorist who kidnapped her. As you can imagine, a lot of people thought it was a terrible idea. Needless to say, nothing came from this idea aside from a poster advertising it in comic books, looking for girls aged 10 to 14 for the cast to play what was described as Cap's special friend. Yikes. Keeping on that silly train, that brings us to our next number. In at 7, he can be a convincing Nazi. Cap has been a Nazi more than most heroes, and definitely more than any of his Avengers peers. That's kind of a skill, right? The ability to be a convincing Nazi, yeah. Aside from Secret Empire in 2017, the whole thing was a different Steve Rogers, it's a long story. Cap has also raised his fascist flag in 1965 and in 1979. The former was in Tales of Suspense, issue 67, and the latter in Captain America, issue 234. Both times he snapped out of it though before the conclusion of the story. So, not a permanent Nazi, but Nazi for a day. Eugh. Still bad. 6. Super racism. Captain America used to be quite racist back in the 40s, as in he literally used to go around shouting, I quote, "White America is a strong America." Wow. Now this is very much a product of the wartime comics, where comics were largely used as propaganda even before the US entered into the fray of World War II. Cap and other heroes, including DC's Superman and Batman, found themselves saying pretty terrible things and doing pretty terrible things with other races and cultures, including the Japanese and the Chinese, who were largely targets in pop culture media at that time. So why is this on a powers list? Because characters the likes of Captain America have great influence over their readers, especially considering he is such an important patriotic symbol. What he does in his panels matter. While this is obviously no longer the case, Cap is anything but racist these days, it is still a startling panel to see.
Number 7. Glide. Many think that Spider-Woman can fly in the comics, which would be pretty cool, given that she doesn't have Spider-Man's famous web shooters. However, this is not true, she cannot fly. What she can do is glide. Glide, 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 glide. This power of gliding through the air looking like she is flying is granted by her suit design, and is still pretty cool all in all. She once had a fight with the Hornet in mid-air and kicked his butt, which he definitely deserved, by the way. Jessica Drew is the only Spider-Woman to have this design. Many different Spider-Women have come and gone after her, but while those other Spider-Women may have adopted the mantle, they all adopted pretty different suits. I think one of them had like webbing, but a lot of them have like legs coming out of them. It's creepy. I'm kinda like it though. Number 6. Psychic shields. Jessica had psychic shields implanted by S.H.I.E.L.D. and some strong ones too apparently. These shields allow her to resist attacks from 3-in-1, who once joined with Emma Frost in an attempt to take on a future alternate version of Jean Grey, and allowed her to resist an attack from Professor Xavier, which of course also surprised him, leaving her standing after many others were knocked down. Pretty impressive, Jess.
Number 8. Venom vs. Wanda. Of course, if you were in the Venomverse, you either had Venom symbiote powers or had been consumed by a poison, and hence were a poison version of the character. In this universe, Wanda was a poison who worked for Lord Doom, and seemed to have retained her magical abilities, but with all of those of a poison as well. So she is essentially subsumed, but all of her memories and the like remain intact, because that is part of the process. So is this Wanda always just here for Doom? It's a pairing that makes sense if you know he's not manipulating and influencing it like that one time. Let their love be natural. Number 7, telekinesis/telepathy. Hopping over to the MCU and one of the most popular versions of the Scarlet Witch to date. This Scarlet Witch has a different power set than her comic book counterpart. As a result of exposure to the Mind Stone, she has developed a form of telekinesis and telepathy. However, the way it is animated and used is slightly reminiscent of her comic book powers. This Scarlet Witch is still extremely powerful, and according to recent rumors by Kevin Feige, she has been elevated to Strongest Avenger, which, if that is the case, 100% legit and earned. We should all be afraid of the Scarlet Witch. Also, did you see what culture did heroic Thanos? I hate them. They're like the worst. Number 6, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex comes to us from Warp World, a world of characters mashed together after Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, folded the universe in half in the Soul Gem, where she had trapped people's souls. So Weapon Hex is a fusion of the Scarlet Witch and Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Her name is still Laura Kinney though. She is meant to be a vessel for both science and magic, and she is trained to be a weapon. But the love she receives ultimately gives her a kinder and more understanding disposition. There's a lot of X-23 in this version and only a little Wanda. Mostly it's there in the powers, which are written on her body, which is pretty neat and a cool design. Number 5, Hex powers. So when the Scarlet Witch was first introduced, she had what were called Hex powers. These powers weren't very defined, except that she could impact probability, which was something writers at the time absolutely loved, because it meant that her powers could be used for literally whatever they wanted. Basically, she could do whatever the plot needed her to, and this would go on for years until the new aspect of her powers, chaos magic, would be introduced, which brings us to number 4. Number 4, chaos magic. Now, instead of just hex powers, she had the ability to channel and wield chaos magic. This was defined by writer Kurt Busiek. This was because the demon Chthon has manipulated her mutation at birth. This was to allow her the ability to wield magic. This was meant to explain some of the things she had done in the past that went beyond just, oh, she can use hexes and manipulate probability. This meant that she could perform complex spells given enough concentration and practice and training. And during this time period, she would even resurrect Wonder Man. Hooray? Number 3, resist the Phoenix Force. In some of her more recent iterations, before her last retcon that removed her mutant abilities and history kinda, and made her one of the second most wanted people for crimes against mutant kind, this was because of the No More Mutants thing. Doesn't matter her mental state or the years she genuinely thought she was a mutant. No, only tyranny. I mean, hooray, mutant pride. Seriously though, that incident is a great source for conflict, and it's cool to see it mined. So Wanda was shown to be able to resist the Phoenix Force and be so powerful herself that she was someone the Phoenix Five were actually afraid of. Valid. The Scarlet Witch is pretty terrifying. So few people can wield the Phoenix Force, yet alone contend with it.
Up next, number 5, the power of preach. It is undeniable that Captain America is a gifted orator. There's a reason why he's often in a leadership position. Dude is really good at motivating and inspiring people. It's kind of his whole shtick, considering his superhero persona in the first place. Let's quickly count down some of the more inspirational speeches of his over the years. In the MCU, there's the whole Price of Freedom speech in Captain America the Winter Soldier. He gave a powerful speech when turning down the presidency in the comics in Captain America issue 250. He even finds himself filming PSAs for high schools about detention, as seen in the MCU Spider-Man film. And then there's the whole whatever it takes speech in Endgame. Hell, even the Ultimate Universe Cap can give a good speech, although a mildly rude and offensive one. He went on a tangent about how the A on his helmet didn't stand for France after he was advised to surrender. Regardless of what it is he's saying, Cap can command a room, and can compel almost anyone's attention with his gift of the gab. Moving on to number 4, super accuracy. Once upon a time in Captain America Comics issue 3, the 3rd issue of his solo series that began in the 40s, Steve Rogers threw a sharp dinosaur bone at a foe and impaled him. murdering him. I mean, it was 1941, so a lot of stuff like this slipped under the radar prior to the Comics Code Authority. Ah, the golden age of comics. Anywho, the story takes place in a museum as Cap and Bucky attempt to stop two small-time robbers from thieving. The dude he kills is a guy named Lenny. He's a petty henchman who probably did not deserve to die, especially in that way. Regardless, that is some damn good accuracy, impaling the kid right through the heart with that bone. It's almost impressive if it wasn't so homicidal. Speaking of using objects to kill people, in at number 3, he can get homicidal with a shield. Steve Rogers has quite the bloody track record. Clearly. Aside from using dinosaur bones to impale lowly criminals, he's also used his shield to murder people too. So wholesome. I mean, it is kind of impressive though, isn't it? I mean, sure, it's made of vibranium, but using an object like that effectively to commit homicide is definitely a skill. Right? Right. Anyway, Cap used his shield to help out superhero Union Jack when Jack's brother, Baron Blood, a vampire if the name didn't give it away, went on a rampage. Cap found himself having to permanently take care of the problem by decapitating him with his shield as Union Jack looked on, and as Baron Blood clawed at his chest too, to boot. Moving on to number 2, the Battle Van. You've heard of the Batmobile, the Quinjet, the Hell Cycle. You name it. But have you heard of the Battle Van? Aside from having a bit of a lackluster name, the Battle Van is more commonly known as Captain America's van, which isn't much better, is it? A product of the 80s, this rad custom-built van, a Chevy nonetheless, was a nondescript vehicle designed by Wakandans for Cap. I mean, I get it, it's really good when you're trying to be low-key, but it kinda looks like he just stole the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo and then spray painted it one color to avoid getting caught. Those dang kids. The van can actually change colors, might I add, but whatever. It can basically function as a base on the go for Cap. It has a mount for his motorcycle at the back because, you know, one vehicle wasn't enough, and even has a little cot if he feels like nap time. Oh. It is worth noting that an alternate reality version of Cap from Earth 600043 actually uses this van religiously, which is pretty great. And finally, in at number 1, he cannot get drunk. Because of Cap's incredibly fast metabolism, thanks to the Super Soldier Serum, he has an immunity to a lot of things. The serum prevents the buildup of fatigue poisons in his muscles, his body is resistant to gases and hypnosis like we mentioned, and he has an immunity to alcohol, meaning he can never get drunk. Often his resistance to alcohol is played up as a joke in the comics or his cinematic appearances, but in a way, that kinda sucks, doesn't it? I mean, not saying that you need to get drunk at a party to have fun, but having the option to choose would be nice at least. He's not the only superhero who suffers from this ailment either. Deadpool has a similar problem thanks to his boosted regenerative healing factor.
Number 5, Super Smell. As Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew has heightened senses, but one you might be surprised to hear about is her super smell. Her smell is so good that she was able to tell that the Nick Fury she was talking to in New Avengers Volume 1, Issue 23 was an AI decoy, as opposed to the real thing. She commented to Maria Hill on her improvements to the model, but cited the smell as the thing that tipped her off. That's some Wolverine level sense of smell there. Unless S.H.I.E.L.D.'s AIs like reek of oil or something, which I sincerely doubt considering how many other people they have succeeded in fooling, this is pretty impressive. Number 4, Dimensional Travel. Jessica ended up getting her very own dimensional watch following the Spider-Verse events. This device was listed as part of her equipment at the back of Spider-Gwen Volume 2, Issue 7. The weird thing though is that in that issue, it was Spider-Gwen's dimensional watch that went missing, not Jessica's. Yet Jessica was concerned about being without a way to teleport home after her and Silk of Earth 616 had joined Gwen on Earth 65 for brunch. Spider-Gwen's device was stolen, and Jessica Drew, Spider-Gwen, and Silk of Earth 616 had to team up to retrieve it. It's just really weird that at the end of this issue, it acknowledges that Jess has one, cause like she clearly didn't have it in that issue. If she found out that she did, she would have like teleported home to her baby in an instant. I am sure. She loves that baby. She loves it. Little baby Jerry. Pretty cute baby actually. Number 3, pheromones. When Jessica Drew was first introduced, she struggled a lot to deal with other people. I mean, of course, she was basically raised in a tube and then later brainwashed by a Hydra into thinking that she'd been a spider, so kind of understand where that comes from. She was known as socially awkward and often written as shy. She ended up feeling isolated and removed from the world, though we later found out the reason she seemed to drive so many people away is because she unknowingly produced fear-inducing pheromones. This later was a forgotten power as Jessica took medication to help suppress it. Later it was implied that the extra pheromones she produced were actually seductive in nature. Or maybe she had just gotten better control of them? I don't know. But she definitely has used them to seduce people before. And once again later she decided to use a fragrance to neutralize and mask her pheromones instead. So this power is still not really often brought up or used, though one time she did use it to get Hulk to make her a sandwich. I'm not joking, that happened. can check it out. Number 2. Superhuman speed. Not only does Spider-Woman have superhuman strength like other spider people, but she also has superhuman speed. In Spider-Woman Volume 1 Issue 40, she is fighting the Flying Tiger. When he swings and misses her, he ends up puzzled. He wonders if she even moved and how he could have possibly missed her. Didn't see her move at all. Jessica reveals in a thought bubble that she is simply too fast for him to see, confessing that she can move faster than one's eyes. She also seems to be able to fall really fast in the comics for some reason. And that fight between her and Tiger has some crazy hilarious dialogue. If you haven't read it yet, you really should. No, Tiger, you're inept. I'm gonna use that insult on people. You're inept. Stop that. Number 1. Venom Blasts. A unique ability that Spider-Woman has that not many other spider people possess is her Venom Blasts. She can shoot bioelectric energy from her hands, which allows her to shock an assailant and often knock them out. This power has the ability to target multiple people, travel through metal as it is an electrical current, and even move through others and leap to another target, like lightning. And these Venom Blasts are powerful. She's used these powers before to hurt Null, Breaker of Worlds, stun an Aleph, and even kill someone. Accidentally, of course. She didn't mean to. She's like, nah, oops, killed ya.
Number 2. Scarlet Witch Famine. This Wanda comes from Earth 10082 and was transformed by Apocalypse into a horseman of the Apocalypse, Famine, which of course lent a whole new devastating arsenal of wasting powers to her already large power set. This character appeared as part of the Heroic Age event. This is another event dealing with time streams and scales and the like, featuring Kang the Conqueror. They at first appeared largely as a la gasp moment for certain Avengers to be shocked that their future selves are horsemen, especially Spider-Man. He was taken aback. Angel becoming Archangel is still the coolest horseman plot. Share your fave down below. And in at number 1, we have reality warping. I've put this at number 1 because while this may be the ability most know the Scarlet Witch for, it is also one of the most controversial. This power was achieved via retcon. After Busiek had worked in chaos magic, Avengers Disassembled would then retcon her abilities to purely mutant, and they would place them in the reality warping vein. And she would be so powerful that she was on an omega scale and she could alter anything, and she did. Firstly, aside from her kids, she created the House of M universe and then nearly erased all mutants from existence. However, these powers would be short-lived. Only a few years later in Children's Crusade, which would also reintroduce those kids, her powers would be re-established as magical, and her powers would be said to be amplified by an outside source, which is why she could do all the extra things she did in those storylines. This retcon, I'm not sure why it happened and then why it was so quickly undone. What do you prefer, chaos magic or reality warping?
Number 10. Super Strength. This one is definitely pretty well known, but hey, maybe some people didn't know, so that's why it's on the list. Luke Cage's super strength is one of his coolest powers. It's helped him in a lot of very difficult situations. Not only that, but it also makes him one of the stronger Marvel heroes. He has been able to take down so many villains, and I mean occasionally even other heroes with this power. And while yes, you may have heard of it, it needed to be mentioned because it's one of his most signature traits. Number 9, basically invulnerable. Yep, Luke Cage is basically invulnerable. I mean, there are certain things that can penetrate his skin, but not a lot. He can withstand bullets, knives, even some superpowered weapons. But he is susceptible to things like adamantium or certain magical weapons. In his TV show, there was even a special bullet called the Judas Bullet. It was made by Hammer Industries using leftover Tritari metal from the Battle of New York. It explodes once it's inside its victim, which instantly kills normal humans, but Luke Cage was able to survive it, although it did really hurt him. Number 8, super healing. Luke Cage's super healing is one of the best in the Marvel Universe. He doesn't even need it since nothing can really technically hurt him, but whenever he gets into a fight with another hero, or hit with adamantium, or shot with the Judas Bullet, he is lucky to have this ability. It is able to heal him back to full health, as if nothing happened. It doesn't happen instantly, but way faster than that of an average human.
Number 7, Bronze Tiger. Now the Amalgam universe has some mashups that people will never forget. I mean, here on this channel, we won't let you forget about Darkclaw, ever, even if you wanted to. But not every Amalgam was one that people felt was spot on, and some felt a little thrown together. Case in point, Bronze Tiger. So Bronze Tiger was a combination of Black Panther and Bronze Tiger. It's just full on having the name of one of them, not even like a Black Tiger or something like that. Also, Bronze Tiger started off as a villain, then transitioned into anti-hero, so he seems a bit of an odd matchup. The history is very brief and seems far more T'Challa, only now the name is T'Challa. Peninsula. B''N'.
Number 6, amazing fighter. This one is not so much a power, but ability, so I just wanted to clarify that right now because it'll probably be mentioned in the comments. But back to my main point. Luke is an insanely skilled fighter. While he was growing up, he constantly taught himself how to fight. And later on, he trained with one of Marvel's most skilled martial artists, Danny Rand, aka the Iron Fist. So, with all of that, he is truly someone you would not want to get in a fight with. Seriously, like, unless you have a death wish, then by all means, go right ahead and fight him.
Up next, number 5, he might be immortal. It has been speculated that Sam is a member of the Externals, an immortal mutant group not to be confused with the Eternals, the race that Thanos and Eros belong to. Context time. The Externals are a rare subspecies of mutants who are immortal, are capable of rebirth, and can absorb power post-mortem. It varies, and most of them were X-Men antagonists over the years. Each External represents an intangible concept, like despair, fortitude, wisdom, opportunity, patience, corruption, the list goes on. So why is Sam presumed to be an External? Because of his ability to come back to life after being killed, as seen in X-Force issue 9 from 1993. While his status as an External is not clear, and Cable has even stated his belief that Sam is not an External, despite stating in the past that he was before, his awakening was something that was felt by all of the other Externals when it happened. It's also worth noting that he died twice over the years. And the intangible concept that he's associated with is hope, so
Number 4, super stamina. Stamina can vary from person to person. A lot of people will work for years to build their stamina up. So if they're, if they are a runner, or maybe they're just lifting weights, or maybe they're just some sort of any type of physical activity, they can last a lot longer. Luke Cage has amazing stamina. He was a strong guy even before he got his powers, but when he got them, everything was amplified, so he could literally fight for just a really long time, and he will never get tired. I mean, even if he did eventually get tired, and that would be a while, the guy is a hero. He would keep pushing himself past all of his limits, because that is what heroes do to protect the city they live in, and Luke Cage always wants to protect people.
Number 3, Black Panda. Welcome back to the world of Peter Porker, the spectacular Spider-Ham, world of quirky Looney Tunes-esque characters and plenty of animal puns. If you love those two things, then this book is for you. On this universe, instead of Black Panther, we have Black Panda, and he doesn't appear too often, but has all the abilities of Black Panther, or at least that's what it seems like. But he's all cute and chippy-fied and looks a little bit like Mickey Mouse. Kinda, sorta, a smidge. Either way, Black Panda is super cute.
Number 2, chemical resistance. Similar to what I was saying about hot and cold, chemicals don't really hurt him. Some at least. I mean, there are some that could probably hurt him, but just average ones that humans are not supposed to interact with would have really no effect on him. Like, he could walk in a room filled with harsh chemicals and absolutely be fine. Whereas a human would probably need to wear a protective suit. It's a very useful power to have, if he's ever in a chemical plant or just clean the house. Number 1, Thunderclap. A lot of people attribute this ability to the Hulk, and in all fairness, I think Hulk does use it a little bit more, but Luke Cage has been known to use the Thunderclap on specific occasions. Basically, if he claps his hands together really hard, he can create this massive boom that can destroy buildings or just hit people back, and is a very useful thing to have, especially in tight situations if you're surrounded or you just want to move the fight away from a certain area.
Number 10, super speed thinking. Evidently, super speed doesn't just affect how fast your body moves, but it affects the mind. Quicksilver is able to think faster than the average human, allowing him to perceive reality faster and respond accordingly. And if you think about it, this is pretty much essential to anyone with super speed. If you can't perceive what's coming at you when you're moving, you'd just be running into everything. In fact, as a result, Quicksilver has an arrogant personality, which writer Peter David explains is a result of this, stating that Quicksilver lives in a world filled with people who don't know how to use cash machines and want to know all the ways to send packages to Africa and can never get your order right in a Burger King unless you repeat it several times. That would tend to make you feel very superior to everyone and very impatient with everyone. I like that. That's really well thought out. In fact, it relates to his next power. Number 9, photographic memory. So with that kind of mind, you need to be able to take in details at a faster rate, which essentially gives Quicksilver a photographic memory. Now you might be thinking, Photographic memory is cool, but it's not a superpower. But you might not know this, but there is no evidence suggesting that photographic memory even exists, which, given the circumstances, would actually make it a real superpower. So I'm giving it to Quicksilver. Number 8. Speed epidemic. In the Marvel Zombies world, Quicksilver is actually instrumental for the widespread of the epidemic, due to the fact that his super speed allowed him to infect a large amount of people in a remarkably short time. Quicksilver effectively made it impossible to contain the zombie virus just because of how rapidly he was able to spread it. So Quicksilver may be the most effective zombie in history.
Number 7. He is a martial arts master. Once again, thanks to the years of intense training with Captain America, Sam is a master in judo, karate, and many other various art styles of martial arts, making him one of the most dangerous fighters in the world. Because of these skills, he has had the upper hand against some of the most well-trained opponents in the world, and he was even able to take down superhumans as strong as the Wrecking Crew members.
Number 6. Superior breathing. So Quicksilver is able to move comfortably in environments where oxygen is reduced to a point where an ordinary human could no longer breathe, indicating that his breathing ability, something essential to any runner, is enhanced by his mutation in some capacity, which would also indicate that he has superhuman stamina.
Number 5. Expert marksman. Now, despite not having the super accuracy that Hawkeye possesses, Sam still manages to do pretty well for himself, especially when a majority of his shooting is done from the sky. As seen in the MCU, he carries a number of smaller firearms on him for some powerful long-range attacks, and he rarely misses.
Number 4. Power restoration. So after Quicksilver lost his powers, he exposed himself to the Terrigen Mist to regain his abilities. However, he also took Terrigen crystals into his body, which also gave him the ability to restore mutant powers that were taken away. That said, this process could usually prove fatal. Still, risk aside, it is a pretty impressive power.
Number 3. His regenerative healing factor. Once again, focusing on Joaquin, thanks to Malice's experiments, he was also turned into a vampire, making him a human-falcon vampire hybrid. Now, this regenerative power comes from the vampire portion of him and has allowed Joaquin to survive fatal wounds, even ones as serious as having his head bitten off. It's even theorized that it could help him regrow parts of his body were he to lose them. There is a major drawback to this ability though. It prevents him from ever being human again, and that's because avian carriers of vampirism don't suffer from a lot of side effects that afflict humans, and only some of those aspects of that condition were transferred to Joaquin. But I mean, hey, if it keeps him alive and fighting, there's really no reason to complain, right?
Number 2. Transfer molecular vibrations. So Quicksilver is able to vibrate his molecules at high speeds, but he's also able to transfer those vibrations to other objects, which can cause it to explode or collapse. And this is a skill he uses to escape prison upon regaining his powers in X-Factor, The Quick and the Dead. And of course, this ability to destabilize his molecules allows him to walk through solid objects. And number 1. Flight. Yeah, I've only seen him use this ability once, and that was in the original X-Men comics way back in issue 44. In an attempt to give chase to Angel, he announces that he's recently developed the ability to fly, but can only remain airborne for more than a few seconds. By all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've researched, this hasn't come up since then. Still, it happened, and given its few appearances and obscurity, it's topping my list.
Number 10. Superhuman senses. When people think of Sabretooth, they usually think of a worse off Wolverine, but what they might not realize is just how close Victor Creed is to Logan when it comes to the abilities that they share. In fact, I would argue that Sabretooth is even a maybe better version of Wolverine when it comes to his power levels. Like Logan, he can use his enhanced sense of smell to track, but he can also tell if someone is lying. His eyesight, however, seems to be even better than Logan's. He has frequently been shown to have night vision and can even see in infrared. He has an enhanced sense of taste as well, and his sense of hearing and smell are so good he was able to use them to sense a ninja from the hand sneaking up on him and an intruder in the X Mansion that no one within was able to detect, including the mansion's advanced security systems. It's like you have a mansion full of mutants and a cool security system no one notices except for Sabretooth. That's how good his senses are. Or how shitty everything else is, I'm not sure which. Number 9. Fangs. You might also remember Sabretooth's claws, another similarity to Logan when it comes to his abilities, though his are somewhat different, more nails than bone spikes. But beyond those, Sabretooth has also prominent fangs. In fact, his fangs have always been prominent. Growing up, his father would actually pull out these pointed devil teeth in an attempt to fix his son. His healing factor, of course, always meant that they would grow back in, causing his father to torture him by prying them out of his mouth once again. Seriously, as much as Sabretooth is a villain, he still has a really tragic enough backstory that you almost feel inclined to empathize with him. His fangs are also known to be sharp and stronger than human bone, so not someone you would want to have give you a love bite probably. He like nips at you and accidentally tears out your throat. Oops. Number 8. Slowed aging. Having a healing factor grants Sabretooth more than one superpower. Not only can he heal himself from injuries and has resistance to poison and disease, but this also grants him slowed aging. It was even suggested at one point in the comics that he had been around since the time of the Roman gladiators. However, this fact was later retconned, and it was later confirmed that he has actually only been around as long as Logan really has. But still, that makes him over 100 years old, and he certainly doesn't look it. Wolverine has even suggested that Sabretooth's healing factor could be stronger. So it's possible that while old man Logan is trucking around, Sabretooth is just somewhere out in the world still looking not a day over 35. Or 40, depending on, what you see when you look at Sabretooth. Number 7. Enhanced senses. Similar to some other superheroes who are known for their healing factor, Deathstroke also has enhanced senses. Honestly, it seems like a lot of times these superpowers are like this weird package deal. You got a healing factor, here's some enhanced senses, they just come together. And there appears to be no exception with Deathstroke. Both his sense of hearing and his sense of smell seem to have been enhanced as a result of his exposure to the Super Soldier Serum, or the immunity to the Truth Serum, depending on where you're at in his continuity. Because originally that's what they told him. They're like, this will make you immune to truth serums. And he was like, I'll take that. That sounds useful. But it wasn't that. Haha. Spoilers. Number 6. Foot claws. So when it comes to claws, Sabretooth has got them on lock. In fact, he has more claws than he likely knows what to do with. While we see him using the claws on his hands quite often, something that gets less attention and comic book coverage are the claws on his feet. Like the claws on his hands, they can be assumed to be just as strong and durable. And when I say strong, I mean it. We have seen his hand claws cut through concrete before. His claws are shown to be an extension of his nails, and the same goes for his feet. So he is really long toenails, I guess, when he wants to, and although it seems awkward, he could also use them in a fight. Similar to his fangs, his claws are also obviously stronger than bone, so think twice before you try to break one of his nails.
Number 5. Immortal. Sinister is for all intents and purposes functionally immortal. This is because of his healing ability that has made him immune to aging and disease. This is because the cells that are recreated are always younger, perfect cells. Not younger, still young, equally young. So why can he heal so well? Well, aside from the abilities he gained from the mutant courier, he has also been exposed very early on to the celestial technology utilized by Apocalypse, the same ones that Apocalypse got as a gift so that he could change the course of human history. Apocalypse has taken a particular interest in Essex because their interests and philosophies very much align. However, this is functional immortality because Sinister can die. He can be killed. It's just going to take a lot of prolonged, focused, concentrated damage to get there.
Number 4. Strong survival instinct. One thing that has really made Victor stand out as both a character and a villain is his strong will to survive. His will to survive also makes him a bit of a loner as well, meaning that he is willing to betray just about anyone to ensure his survival. His teammates, his lovers, at the end of the day, Sabretooth is all about guaranteeing his own survival, going to any lengths to ensure this. This comes from years of suffering child abuse and experimentation, and has been drilled into him throughout many different training regimens and in training to become a skilled tactician. His ruthlessness when it comes to survival is also what likely allowed him to whoop Wolverine's butt so many times. Let's not forget that every time they tangled for the first 20 or so years, it was usually Sabretooth who came out on top. Victor even visits Logan yearly on his birthday just to kick his butt. True story. Wolverine's like, don't hang out with me because Sabretooth's gonna show up on my birthday, kick my butt, so he doesn't do a lot of parties. Although Wolverine probably wouldn't party a lot anyways. Likes to keep to himself too. Number 3. God Killer. Deathstroke was granted this weapon after he accepted a contract from Hephaestus to kill the Greek titan Lepettus. The God Killer is a near indestructible weapon that can repair itself once broken and can shapeshift into whatever form of weapon best suits its user. It also reaches out to enhance its user's creativity and mental capacity so that their fighting style and capability in wielding the weapon is improved. It can also absorb energy, redirecting any attack directed at it back to its assailant, but doubled in force. So it is not a weapon that you want to come up against. But it's alright because it got taken away from Deathstroke. Wah wah. Then he had to pull out his eyeball, because that's how that goes. You know how it goes.
Moving on to number 2, energy absorption. Cannonball can absorb and redirect energies from others. In Uncanny X-Men issue 341 from 1997, he took on Gladiator, aka Kalark, the warrior from the Shi'ar Empire, the Shi'ar Imperial Guard leader, who gives off some serious Superman vibes, might I add. Gladiator is a pretty strong dude. When fighting him, Sam was able to absorb his punches and redirect their energy force to use as an attack. That's not the only thing that he can do when it comes to energy absorption though. He can absorb outside kinetic energy to add to his own energy supply, making our next number even more powerful. And at number 1, his blast field. Perhaps the coolest thing that Cannonball can do is that he can manifest his energy as an impenetrable and practically indestructible blast field. Not only does this act as a very specific force field of sorts that protects his body incredibly well, he can also do a whole lot of other neat stuff with it. He can extend the energy to encompass him like a personal shield, extend it far enough to protect others under that shield, and he can shape it in various ways. He's done so to imprison foes in the past. And when he absorbs outside kinetic energy, Sam has used it to increase the power of his own attacks and blows, and can even create explosive shockwaves upon impact. But it is important to note that anything he does with this blast field takes a lot of concentration. He's essentially emitting this energy and actively concentrating on not blasting off, so that he doesn't propel himself into the air when he uses it.
Number 10. Immune to mystical attacks. When you're a superhero, you need to be prepared for pretty much anything. There are a wide array of different types of villains that can come your way. This of course includes magic. So T'Challa worked to find a way to render himself immune to mystical attacks as a way to deal with Dr. Doom. Cause one must never forget that Dr. Doom is a master of science and magic, for he is Doom, and he doesn't discriminate. He has no time for science versus magic pettiness. So T'Challa got an alchemical upgrade that made him able to detect, hide from, and be impervious to mystical attack. Now mileage on this varies. For some it's cool, he saw a problem and a weakness and he solved it. But for others it's like, well, isn't this like when you're playing on the playground and the kid is like, nuh-uh, you can't hit me because suddenly I have immunity. T'Challa can already do a lot, so for some this was overkill. Number 9. Reanimate the dead. Oh yes, Black Panther is a necromancer and actually king of the dead. So he can raise the dead and create and command a zombie army, which may not sound like the most heroic ability, but I guess it's all in how you use it. He was anointed as king of the undead, and with that came all of these mystical abilities. The thing with an ability like this is not only does it feel like it skews villainously, but it also is something that changes the scope of many conflicts. I mean, there are dead people everywhere, so any conflict is just potential zombie horde, or maybe at least zombie gang, or henchman, or wait, heroic, okay, zombie sidekick. Number 8. Humanoid Panther. Earth X is one of the well-remembered alternate universe Marvel stories, a dystopian world where a mutagenic virus has run rampant, courtesy of, you guessed it, Reed Richards. The way these mutations manifested varied, but in Black Panther's case he became a panther. A human panther. Panther Man. Cat Man. It's hard to be a menacing cat man. I mean, you can push and make a credible case, but it's an uphill battle. The whole story was pretty interesting though, so actual Panther Black Panther fit right in. He fit right in. Marvel is currently mining its past successes, so there is a follow-up series following some miscellaneous characters and kind of a prequel to Earth X, and so far it's pretty solid.
In at number 7, his power levels vary. Over the years, Sam's powers have varied wildly. As we mentioned earlier, in the beginning, Sam was only capable of emitting thermochemical energy from his legs and feet. And while his ability to manipulate his blast fields are pretty consistent, more on those later, the full range of his powers have been speculated. At his peak, we've seen him plummet to the ground from a high altitude and completely devastate several city blocks. He's also faced foes that are considered quite strong in the Marvel universe. One thing is for sure though, when he applies thrust to his powers, there is a significant hike in what he can do, like increase his strength enough to lift over a ton of weight.
Number 6. Mangaverse. So on Earth X, T'Challa was a literal panther man. In the mangaverse, oh, it's so much better. So he's a dude with a pet panther who can summon spirits, and when he does so, him and his panther combine into Black Panther. Again, a panther man, but this time a dude literally fused with the cat. He could also become the Falcon, cause why not? Summoning spirits and animal transfiguration. Practically the same thing. I can't think about any of this without thinking about Manimal.
Number 5. Enhanced Speed. This power is not one that immediately comes to mind when you think of Luke Cage, but he does technically have it. Because of his strength, he's able to push his body a lot farther than the average human. Now, he's not as fast as people with super speed, but he would still be near the top of the list. Plus, he could run through things and it would not really hurt him. Unless it was some sort of adamantium wall or alien metal or something along those lines, then yeah, it might hurt him a little bit, but he'd bounce back. He is super healing, he's all good, you don't have to worry about Luke Cage.
Number 4. Spirit Energy Constructs. So back to King of the Dead. Not only can T'Challa raise a zombie army, but if your body is no more than just, well, you know, it's done, he can raise your spirit and create a kind of physical construct body for you to inhabit. So you'll be corporeal and be able to do some damage. That's intense. This is high sorcery. Scary T'Challa. Let the dead rest. But what he really does with this is create a magic spirit of ectoplasm that can affect both our physical plane and the nether realm. Plus it looks cool.
Moving on to number 3, biokinetic blasts. One of the many tricks Cannonball has pulled over the years when utilizing his thermochemical energy field propulsion is that he can create biokinetic blasts out of his hands, like concussive blasts. It takes a lot of concentration to channel it, but it has proven to be an effective attack. In addition to this, he was trained in hand-to-hand combat by Cable and has become an efficient fighter that way.
Number 2. Ghost Panther. The Infinity Warps universe. More amalgams, but this time with other characters within the Marvel universe. So here we have a fusion of Black Panther and Ghost Rider, specifically Johnny Blaze. Here we have a young T'Challa who was arrogant and rebellious and exiled from Wakanda after getting in some beef with his dad. So he went to America where he met Jericho Simpson, who became his new mentor and renamed him Johnny Blaze. Just cuz. He took up stunt work. But then while doing a stunt, he felt his father dying, which broke his concentration, so he died too. Then he was revived and offered Ghost Rider's powers. Just cuz. He wasn't down for it at first, but accepted when it gave him the opportunity to take on his father's killers. Number 1. Hypercosmic awareness. So Black Panther has been exposed to the mind of Galactus, and this combined with his exposure to the Heart Herb, well, it changed him. He was able to see the confines of the Marvel Universe, and eventually also the multiverse. So he could have visions of things occurring outside of the 616. What good does this do? Well, it's great when there's imminent doom. Otherwise, it would just be annoying. Oh man, I know that Peter B. Parker got a gym membership. This information, the world needs it. Alert the media. Black Panther, gossip monger. That would never happen, but it's fun to think about.
Number 10 can use 90% of his brain. When people think of Slade Wilson, some people just think of him as another Deadpool. While Deadpool may have soared in popularity due to his feature film starring Ryan Reynolds, it is actually Deadpool himself who is the Marvel ripoff version of Deathstroke. That's right, Deathstroke actually came out before Deadpool was even around. And comically so, Deadpool was actually very aware of this, as were his creators Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. As such, when people think of Deathstroke, they often think of a skilled mercenary with a healing factor. But something they forgot is while Deadpool is mentally tormented by his own self-awareness and his insanity, Deathstroke is actually a level-headed and serious tactician, making him even more dangerous than his Marvel counterpart. Kind of making sense as to why they made him like a little more crazy in the Marvel version. Get it? It's making fun of him. This is also due to the fact that the super soldier serum that Deathstroke was exposed to increased his mental capacity, allowing him to access 90% of his brain capacity. That's not how that works, but very well, comics. This makes him smarter and an incredibly fast thinker, and I would even argue that this power is way more valuable than his healing factor, as it means he doesn't have to rely on it as much. And his healing factor isn't regeneration, so he can't just like make new limbs or anything. It's just a healing factor, okay? Number 9. Master Tactician. Beyond having an enhanced brain, even before he was exposed to the super soldier serum, Slade Wilson was known as a brilliant military officer. He could easily pick up skills and was a quick learner. And he's always followed his own strict moral code and shown himself to be very disciplined. Combine this with his enhanced brain and you get a master tactician. When it comes to plotting and planning, there's almost no one better than Deathstroke in the entire DC universe. And if you don't want to take my word for it, take Superman's. When Superman needed a tactical officer, his first thought was of Deathstroke. He didn't really even know him that well at the time. He actually asked Slade to join him in fighting a war in space. And let's not forget how Deathstroke once whooped Batman's butt, a hero who is known for his contingency plans and tactical prowess himself. Number 8. Energy Lance, or Energy Staff, depending on, what you want to call this thing. I like to think of it as a lance, but When you think of Deathstroke, you might first think of his iconic sword, and while he does fight with that often, there's another weapon that Slade is also apt to reach for, his Energy Lance. His Energy Lance can be adjusted when it comes to the amount of energy it blasts you with. It can also be adjusted in size as well. Slade has used it to both stun and kill enemies. Later he has it modified so that he is actually the only one who can use it, as its activation is tied to his costume's gloves, so no one can wield it against him. The lance itself has also been known to emit blasts strong enough to blow up a helicopter in a single hit. That's insane! It should be noted that while it was capable of that feat, however, it struggles to blow a hole in battleship steel. I guess battleship steel is stronger than helicopter steel? These are like the grades of steel. What are you making with that steel? That will be the strength of that thing.
Number 7. Telepathy. Sinister is also an accomplished telepath. In adaptations, for some reason, this isn't often the part of his powers that is highlighted. Watching the 90s animated series as a kid, I had no idea, but I was also like 8. So he can do your standard telepathic dealings for a radius of 250 meters, so he's not exactly the most powerful, but hey, if you get into that radius, you are in trouble. And at times he can extend it, but that takes effort. He can read your mind, project thoughts, mask his presence, take over bodily control of a person, cause amnesia. He can also erect a psionic shield. Scary stuff. He tends to do this for furthering his ends. I keep wanting to say for sinister purposes, but no, that's what he wants.
Number 6. Improved depth perception. Deathstroke is known for his iconic mask, which, if you weren't aware of, isn't just all show. Or well, I mean, it is kind of all show. Slade is very proud of the fact that he lost his eye and can still be an insanely skilled fighter and marksman without it. To show off this fact, his mask only has one eye hole. He actually lost his eye when his wife shot it out. She meant to kill him, but instead shot out his eye, after he let their son, Joseph's throat get slit. Watch out, you'll shoot your eye out with that. In fact, later when Deathstroke found himself de-aged, and with his lost eye miraculously re-healed and returned, he actually found it more challenging. He had been used to compensating for so long that his depth perception had actually become almost enhanced from not having a second eye. In the end, he gruesomely removed this second eye, but even while he had it, he often preferred to cover up his one eye to make it easier for him to fight. So you'll notice he still wears the same mask even though he had two eyes. But then he was like, nah, don't like it. That's how good his depth perception is without both eyes. He'd rather just go one eye all the time. Deathstroke the Cyclops, we should call him. Number 5. Adamantium Enhanced. Like his heroic counterpart, Sabretooth has also had his skeleton altered and enhanced with adamantium. Once Apocalypse did this to him, and another time the re-established Weapon X was behind it. This of course makes Sabretooth even more durable than he was previously, and when Weapon X altered him, they actually also improved more than just his skeleton, making him stronger and also increasing his healing factor as well. However, Sabretooth is also susceptible to adamantium poisoning, and as a result, it also sometimes weakens his healing factor, as his healing factor then has to work to stave off the poison, making him somewhat weaker overall as a result. Number 4. Flight. While Deathstroke can't fly alone by himself, he has some super useful tech that makes this possible. One of the most principal of which is his Icon suit. The suit was invented by his friend Dr. Icon, also known as Dave Isherwood. When Dr. Icon first gave the prototype suit to Wilson, he actually kind of just tossed it in the back of his locker, kind of just like dismissing it. But when the final version came into his hands, he decided to start utilizing that. The suit is powered via the user's own kinetic energy that they give off while wearing and moving in it. It uses this kinetic energy to shield itself, able to protect itself from small projectiles through fist-sized barriers. So if you like throw a punch or if you try to shoot him, not gonna work. Deathstroke even had the suit modded to include rocket boots, so he could also use it to fly around. Unfortunately, these rocket boots were so heavy that they slowed him down dramatically, so he really only used them for one issue in Deathstroke Volume 4. You can see that in issue 6. Still, a flying Deathstroke sounds pretty terrifying. And he also kind of got depowered because Jericho had the original suits and then he could like depower his dad, but anyways, go read issue 6. Why am I telling you about it? Just read it.
Number 3. Energy Projection. As if all of these powers weren't enough, Mr. Sinister can also fire energy blasts from his hands, also known as concussive blasts. These blasts can be so strong that they can match Cyclops' optic blasts, which are known to be incredibly powerful. So Sinister can do some serious damage with these blasts, so if you're going up against Sinister, you're just gonna get attacked on all fronts. Telepathically, physically, probably emotionally, it's not gonna be a good time.
Number 2. A cybernetic implant. Now back to Sam. In his brain, he has an implant that enhances his ability to see what birds see, and I will talk on that more next. And that allows him to transmit what he sees into a data storage unit that converts those visuals into images and videos. Now this is great for some stealthy surveillance and espionage type missions, as it allows for the other members of his team to know exactly what they're going up against ahead of time. And number 1, avian telepathy. Now in my opinion, this is the coolest power that Sam has, and that's why I put it at number 1. Thanks to the Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube, Sam was given the ability to telepathically link with birds. This ability is strongest with his companion Redwing, but he's also able to extend it to other birds, allowing him to see the world through their eyes, and it also allows him to control the bird that he's connected to. Now the coolest thing is that this also applies to all avian-like creatures, even the inhuman bird people seen on Airy or Sky Island. However, this link to them is very limited and restricted to low-grade telepathic readings.